Hey, guys, show me. Math is here, and today we're gonna go over 3 reasons why your net worth explodes after you hit $100,000. I wanna break this into 3 little bite-sized pieces and give you the concept so that you understand why it is that there really is this inertia in the very beginning that once you get over, you're gonna see dramatic increases. In fact, the chart of compounding interest grows like this. This line being time. This line here being dollars, right? So we want to get over here like, for really wealthy billionaires. One of the greatest examples is Warren Buffett. I don't think he had $1 billion, beat her before he hit 50, but now, he's worth quite close to $100 billion, is because his net worth is absolutely taking off. The example that people give, that I'll just repeat and steal, there's a snowball. When you have a really small snowball, it doesn't pick up a lot of snow, but once it starts to get some momentum and starts getting bigger, then every time it rolls over, it gets a ton of snow and continues to grow. And I call that, just simplistically, I'm gonna call it the doubling effect. So I'll just say 3 reasons. Let's just say number 1 is doubling. What is doubling? Easiest way to understand this concept is something called the rule of 72. What you do is you take 72 and you divide it by the interest, and that equals the years it'll take for something to double. So let's just say that my interest is 10%. So let's put the number in, then it'll take me 7.2 years to double. So let's just use some examples, right? Let's say that I have. Now use $1,000 here. I'll make a little chart here. We'll have some fun. Let's see if I could draw, right? Meow. Alright, so if I have, let's just say it's 7.2 years. And we'll just say this is where we start, is right here, or actually, we'll start up here. We'll start it. Let's say $1,000. What's another good one? 10,000, yeah, and we'll do 100,000. So if we start off, then 7.2 years later, we're doing 10. Then the law of doubling is gonna say in 7.2 years, this 1,000 will be 2,000, the 10,000 will be 20,000, the 100,000 is 200,000. So this increased $100,000 in the time it took us to grow $1,000. Small snowball right here, big snowball up here. This is why it really starts to explode. Now, you're seeing why this number starts about now. Let's take it even further. What if we had $1 million? Now it's 2 million, right? We made $1 million in 7.2 years. This is how the stuff grows. Now, if we get to another doubling, so we're at 14.4, then we get $4,000, 40,000, 400,000. You just made $200,000 in another 7.2 years. Now we're cooking. You see what it is. And that 2 million is 4 million. We just made $2 million in the span of 7.2 years. Same interest rate. That same 10%, same investment. Wildly different result. Why? Because it comes down to what we're starting with. You see how this work? Now? So now we go to, what are we looking at? 21.6. Our next doubling or so. We've done 4 doublings now. And now, we're at 8. We're at 800,000. Boom. And we don't want to forget our little millions over here. Now, we're at 8 million. See what happens. I can't get out of the weight of my wealth. Whenever we talk about, profits not being tax exempt or compounding inside of a 401k or DB plan. All those things. If we can just grow the money, we get huge results. We always have to figure out, a little bit of tax on these things. Unless we're just letting it grow. Hey, we're just letting it compounding grow in a tax-free arena. Or we're just tax-free growth, which there is, especially in real estate. But now watch what happens. We get one more. So what are we gonna have? We're gonna be at 28.8. You've had this stuff for about 30 years. That always seems to be kind of the secret sauce, right? When you hear about people Whoa. What are the categories of millionaires? There was a study of 10,000 millionaires. Top 3 categories, where engineers, accountants, and teachers, and people are like, what are teachers doing up there? They don't make a ton of money, no, but they're really good at this. They're really good at starting and leaving their investments for 30 years, while they're doing their career without touching it, and watch what happens. That 8,000 never really, it's not really getting started, right? We're looking at that going, yeah, that's really exciting, Toby. So I invested 1,000 and it turned into 16,000 in 30 years. Yeah, that's not gonna get it done, is it? We're gonna have to work our ass off to make sure that we get a bigger amount. How about that 10,000? Well, now it's 160,000. The average American, right, doesn't even have that much. They couldn't even do that. Just start with something. You don't even have to add to it. All you have to do is let it grow, let it compound. Well, there's nothing else that grows at 10%. The S&P 500 beating that in its lifetime. It's history. Sorry, all you did is stick it in SPY or VOO. You're gonna be in this wheelhouse. Here's our big one, though. 1.6 million, boom. That's why that 100,000 is the magic mark. Look at the difference. If we can get to $100,000, it absolutely explodes. And now, guy over here or rich gal, 16 million. They just keep compact. They don't even know what to do with the money. They're like, I don't even want it anymore. Who do I give it to? Raise your hand. Right. So that's doubling. That's if you can get that through your head. Hey, it's all about time. Letting it double again. Letting it double again. There's an old, how do you say it, an adage. It was, kind of, a quiz. Would you rather have a penny that doubles every day for a month or $1 million? And a lot of people what is? Well, I want the $1 million. Well, the penny that doubles every day ends up being, and gets over $3 million or some ridiculous. When you get to day 31, because of the rules of doubling every time you double it, just continue. Now it's picking up a lot of snow. Now, that little ball is getting big. Like even here, you look at it, saying, it's nothing to shake a stick at, but what I would be doing no matter what. And I know that there's folks that have said this out there. You fight like crazy to build up your little nest egg. You let it grow over time. You continue to dump it and, just keep putting into it. Even if all you're doing is taking 10% of your take-home pay. If all you do year after years, do that, you're gonna get up into this category. It's gonna take a while, but you'll get up in that category. How do we know? Again, teachers somehow are more often millionaires than lawyers. Lawyers get paid a lot more. Teachers have more patience and are doing that they letting things double. So that's number 1, Dublin. And I'm just gonna give you guys a quote. Just cause I like these types of things. Wealth is when small efforts produce big results. Poverty is when big efforts produce small results. Actually, kind of like that. Wealth is when small efforts produce big results. What did you do? You put an account. And it might be that you started here. You needed to 10,000. Now, we're over 100 now. We're up to 160,000 now. That's you just keep waiting. All you have to do, small effort, open up the account, pay it like a bill, even if it's like a cell bill. Hey, I'm just gonna pay an amount into there, and I'm gonna do it consistently over time, and I'm gonna get a nice snowball, and I'm gonna let it roll downhill and just pick up a lot of snow. That's what compounding is. That's what doubling is. Once you get your head around it, then you realize it's all about that patience. So small efforts, big results. Works out super crazy. Wanted to give that one to you. That's the one that makes the most difference. You'll hear it 20 different ways, somebody trying to explain it to you, but what it really comes down to is you gotta be patient. You gotta let things grow over time. If you want to get really wealthy, and you don't have money, you're gonna have to go out there and find a way to make the money, so you can start your snowball. You got to. There are ways to do this, by the way, with leverage, which is one of those things that is. It's like fire. It could be extremely potent, but it's this. I'll get in that concept in a second, because I'll use it as part of scaling up. But let's another quote real quick. Buffett. The stock market is a device for transferring money from the inpatient to the patient. All right, here. If you could just put it into the market, resist the temptation to mess with it, let it continue to compound. You can maximize. You can even increase the amount of your return by doing things like covered calls, cash, secured puts, being a stock market landlord. We teach all this, by the way, in Infinity Investing. And by the way, Infinity Investing was a gold medal book that I wrote, was a bestseller on Amazon. If you would like a free copy, all you have to do is put free book in the comments below. All you have to write, just type in free book. We'll send you the link, so you can get a free. It'll be a PDF version, but you'll get a free copy of the book if you want to buy the hardbound. It's Infinity Investing and still available on Amazon. It's done great, and it still is applicable. Today is when I wrote it a few years back. Alright, scaling up is number 2. So where I'm gonna write up to? I'm just gonna pick a place. When you're investing, scaling actually works really well. And that's because the same investment. And use these as an example, just do this. The same amount, that same growth could have such a different impact as far as the size of it growing on each investment. So your scaling works really well when you are passively investing. It's extremely difficult when you're running an active business. Other words, there might be so many people I can serve. But as you're growing your business, you have to have a certain number of employees. You gotta make sure that you could service the demand. If I have all salespeople and no support, I'm gonna have issues. People complaining, I need to be able to deal with that. There's materials. There's all these things that make it very difficult to scale up when you are investing. And you have large amounts of money that you are investing. It scales up tremendously easily. Like, I could do this with $1 billion. I could do this with $1 million. I could do this with $100,000. It's all the same amount of effort. It's pretty much the same thing. Now, when you get to $1 billion, obviously, you're probably gonna have money managers saying, hey, let's spread it out amongst multiple things, but you don't have to overly complicate it. You can make it very, very simple. So this type of thing scales up extremely well. And because of that, it's fairly predictable that when you see returns, let's say you see this 10%. What if I can get a line of credit at 5% and I am investing in things that are returning more? Now, I tend to be debt adverse, but I'm okay with leverage so long as I know that I'm gonna get that growth. So I do. In real estate, you hear people leveling up all the time. They buy a building. Rarely are they buying a building with cash. They're generally buying that building with some sort of mortgage to level up. The same thing can work in investing. Now, you have to be careful. Anytime you're dealing with debt, it's fire. But if you are consistently getting a certain result, that you can get money that is below that amount, your cash-on-cash return goes up exponentially. In other words, let's just say that I used a line of credit and I did $10,000. So I got my line of credit and I did this $10,000. I'm gonna have to pay something. Maybe it's that 5%. So, let's say that the first year you make 10. So you make 1,000. And it cost you 500, you had to pay. So you ended up with a net of 500, but you had zero money because you borrowed it all. Your return is actually really extraordinarily good when you do that. That's why people use the leverage. You could lever yourself into the situation here too. I just be very careful. There's certain things that I might do that and that I wouldn't do others. Investing. If I'm a long haul, I know that statistically, I'm gonna be up if I could invest for 15 years. So if you're looking at this number, you're looking at this row, and you're saying, this is where I'm gonna be. I'm okay as long as you could support paying that leverage or even pay it off aggressively. I'm okay with it. If it's shorter, then you might want to look at things where it's a higher return in a much shorter horizon, like, for example, long short-term debt, things like that. You might get into the 12% category, 10%, 11, 12% over 2 years, and you're doing it in much shorter period. I know there's organizations that actually teach that as a way to generate wealth, because you can get a line of credit. You could go over here, you can get over here pretty quick if you're willing to take that risk. Now, I'm just gonna say, anytime I deal with that, you gotta be able to pay it back. You can't be reliant on this as the means to paying it back. It's gonna allow you to compound a lot faster, but you still wanna make sure you're not in a situation where it's gonna hurt you. Then last thing, number 3, I'm just gonna put that up here, just to make it as confusing as possible. Rich people benefits. Sorry, I did right through the growing line. Okay, here's one of the benefits of when you get over $100,000. Little expenses. Things that used to be a big emergency that might be like, oh, shoot. The water heater busted isn't a life-altering expense any longer. When you start getting up, and you have enough saved up, the little stuff starts to become little stuff. Little stuff seems monumentally huge. When you're below that line, and that just comes with, hey, I have enough saved up. I have an income source coming in to where I'm not worried about the small things. And let me put it in a different context, so that I don't want to be misunderstood. When you are living off of your investments. So when you are living off of the success of your investments, and by the way, these are all being locked away, and allowing them to grow. This is why your net worth's gonna explode. These are seeds that you planted, and you're not harvesting them yet. You're letting these things grow for a long period of time. You're gonna forget that you got them. Life hack. Set up an account, dump 10,000, 100,000, whatever into it. Forget that you have it, lose your password for 30 years. Check back in. It's a big amount of money, right? That's letting donate your seed, right? That's letting things grow over a long period of time. And you're not feasting on it. If you have to live off of this, then a market correction like we had in 2008, which dropped the market 38, and you're having to spend those dollars when we just had a correction, that's painful. That's what we're avoiding when we can start, when we have $100,000 set aside that we don't need to live off. That's a huge benefit, is that I don't have to spend money when I'm forced to. So, for example, I have stock ABC. It's worth $100, but it drops to 70, and I'm forced to pay my bills with that $70. I'm forced to take the loss when if I had waited, statistically speaking, I'm gonna get that 100 back, plus a whole bunch more if I can be patient. But if I'm forced to spend it, it could be really, really brutal. And that's why I say when you lock this stuff aside, make sure that you're able to pay your debt or other things on your own. You don't want to disturb the things that you planted. Those investments that you planted. You gotta give them time, guys. You gotta put them in put them off to the side. Forget you got them. You'll know that you have them, but forget that you have access to it, right? Don't be like, don't dip into it or you'll be harvesting it too soon. And it's like, it's like fruit tree, right? It's not ready. It's not ripe. You're not gonna want those apples when they're just little nubs, right? Don't do it. Don't harvest it. Resist that temptation. You gotta let it mature. And that's one of the benefits. Once you have that little egg of $100,000 plus, is that type of stuff is not as big of a deal. You have other things that you could pay for, but that not now. It's growing on its own. It's not completely destructive to have a breakdown on your car and things like that. So it also comes down to when you have that type of money. I'll just tell you the first time you hit $100,000 in a bank account. Some of you guys will remember that the peace of mind and the security of knowing that you have. That is kind of nice. It actually is a thing. It's all of a sudden, you're like, it's kind of like, you're climbing hills. And you're climbing up a mountain. And you get up to one of the peaks. And you're like, oh, this is great, right? It was really tough getting up there, but if you feel a lot better. Number 2 on that. Rich people benefits. You now have a little more capacity for risk. You're not living off of it. You don't need the money. Maybe you're willing to take a little higher risk for a bigger reward. Maybe you're shooting for that 12%. You're able to do it. You also have access to investments that not everybody has. Once you get over a certain point, you may hit in becoming what's called an accredited investor, and now you have access to invest in things that the rest of the normal folks don't get access to. Once you have that type of money, you might also find that you have access to cheaper money. One of the funny things I used to do with businesses is, I would a CD in there. People say, "Why are you getting a CD?" I get a line of credit against it. You set up a business and put money in it and then take a line of credit against the CD. Yeah, so I could establish it's business credit. And then in a couple years of constantly paying, eventually they're gonna say, you don't need to have the security anymore. I take my CD back out and give myself back the money. But what did I just do? I just established a pattern for getting business credit in that business. Well, you could do this individually too. If I have a stock account, for example, let's say that I'm over here. You know what I can do against that stock account? I could borrow about $700,000 at rates that are a lot less than mortgage rates. How do I know? Because I do that. It's called a security backline of credit. So you can access funds much cheaper in a much easier, so you could take advantage of other opportunities that come along. You see this in real estate all the time. Somebody will go in and they'll buy real estate. They'll improve that real estate. 5 years later, the real estate's gone up in value. You borrow the money, you go out, and you buy more real estate. You continue to repeat that process 30 years from now. I've been paying off on all those mortgages. They're getting paid down to nothing. And it's not me really, it's the tenants of the properties. But I've accumulated a ton of assets. That's a rich people problem. Guys, once you get up there, you get over that $100,000 mark, you're gonna get access to some of these things. And then another one that will make sense to you guys is if I'm having to pay for expertise or education, and I'm paying, let's say $5,000 a year. If I have $10,000 in my bank account and in my investment account, that's a big chunk of that money. And it's like, oh, why am I doing it? When you get up over here in the bigger, the economies of scale makes those things very insignificant. That's why you see a lot of wealthy people constantly educating themselves, going to conferences, learning about different investing strategies, because it's inexpensive in comparison to what they're able to get out of it. Now, if you do it down here, I would say it's still worth it for you to learn things and get access to different types of investments, and also learn the ropes of what it means to be a good investor. But you're gonna have to still work your butt off to get money into those and feed those accounts so you can grow. And it really comes down to this thing accessing kind of the financial tools, the ideas, the knowledge, the group. That is a big thing. And then I'll save the last thing. And I'll just, you guys go. The last thing is you start accumulation mindset. Once you see how this stuff works, you can't unsee it. Once you experience it, you can't unexperience it, right? Once you see how it works, you're gonna start realizing, holy cashmoly, I wanna push a lot more assets into this thing, and let it do this doubling. Boom, 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 boom. That's a good thing. What you're not gonna do is let your money sit in a checking account, not doing anything. The reason people do that is cause they don't realize the alternative of putting into something that is compounding. When something compounds, it's going to grow over time. And again, it's a long time horizon. But the growth, the amount of money you are making. Just let's put this in perspective. This person here in the first quadrant up here, they put money in the $1,000. 7.2 years later, they had 2,000. So the same amount of time as this person made 8 million. It went from 8 million to 16 million. The same 7.2 years. Huge difference. And that's why the net worth just actually takes off once you get to right around the $100,000 mark. So I'm just gonna say that's why networks really takes off over 100 grand. Because that's where you see their true impact. The true awesomeness of doubling in that compound interest. Hey guys, if you like this information, please like and subscribe. Please share it with anybody. And for my free book, if you want to read Infinity Investing on ideas of how you can get into the world of compounding and growing your assets this way, just write 3 book down in the comments. I'll send you the link so that you too can get Infinity Investing free. Share it with whoever you want. The end of the day, we're all in this together. I have this abundance mindset where I think everybody could be wealthy, and I'm not wrong. I think anybody could be wealthy. I think everybody could be wealthy if you do the things that wealthy people do. Good luck.